All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to the Administration and Finance Committee meeting for September 13th to order. I do apologize for a few minutes delays. This evening, we have all trustees in attendance except for Trustee Ana Da Silva. And yes, all trustees are in attendance except for Trustee Ana Da Silva. We begin this evening's meeting with our land acknowledgement. I'd like to call and our prayer. I'd like to call our student trustees to take us through this section of the meeting.
Dufferin Peel, as we know it today, is rich in the history and modern traditions of many First Nations, the Métis and Inuit. From the lands of the Anishinaabe to the Haudenosaunee and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, our Catholic social teachings call us in solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, and animals, and ancestors that walked before us. All of these wonderful elements of creation exist, gifted to us by our Creator God. We'd like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation of being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thank you, Trustee Sicoli. Can we have either one of you or both of you take us through through opening prayer as well, please?
I'm having a few issues with my internet right now, but I'll try my best if everyone can hear me.
Yes, go ahead, please. Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
Okay. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, bless us as we gather today for this meeting. Guide our minds and hearts so that we will work for the good of our community and help all people. Teach us to be generous in our outlook, courageous in face of difficulty, and wise in our decisions. Father, we praise you forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you very much. Onwards to A4, if I can have approval of the agenda, please.
I move, Thomas.
Moved by Trustee Thomas. Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. 4A, Associate Director Del Bianco. Is there any calendar items?
Through the chair, there is the construction progress report as part of the agenda. And prior to, I guess it's for receipt. And if there are any questions, Superintendent Thomas is available to answer those questions. So
thank you very much.
Receipt of that report.
Thank you. Can I have somebody move receipt of the construction progress reports? Trustee Daryl D'Souza, thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none. Are there any questions regarding the reports?
Chair Pascucci, I have a question.
Okay. Trustee Beard Corbett, please go ahead. And I forgot to mention, sorry, before you do that, Trustee Corbett, if you have any questions, please just message me in the chat, or you can send me a text message as well. So go ahead, Trustee Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, just on page 5, it's just regarding the status update for Our Lady of Mercy Catholic Elementary School, the new childcare that's going in. It says the design of the project's nearly complete at 90%. Just wanted if there was any further additional information that could be provided in terms of this, because I know we need to have reports out a bit sooner than when it gets published.
So through the chair, thank you for the question and good evening. What I can tell you is that the facilities team is working diligently with the architect on the project. And for the most part, again, design is substantially complete. We are moving forward with our plan to tender construction fairly soon. So as noted in the report, as well as in the spreadsheet, which has the timeline, we are looking for substantial completion to be occurring through the summer months of 2023 in time for September of next year.
So thank you for the update and through the chair. So the majority of the construction will be starting until next summer then, is that correct?
Well, through the chair, we're going to sort of take that as it comes. If we can complete all of the substantial design work and get an approval to proceed process, or sorry, the tendering process, completed earlier, then certainly we'd like to try and get moving on that project. Our teams have been working with the school, both with Our Lady of Mercy as well as San Lorenzo Ruiz, just to give them a heads up that we would like to start moving on the construction work as soon as possible. Originally, we had hoped that we'd be able to move sooner on these projects, but we did have to wait on approval from the Ministry of Education to grant us an approval to proceed. So we were delayed somewhat in waiting for that response. But again, we have been apprising the school administrations, and we will continue to do so as we move forward.
Thank you, Superintendent. And just one last question, Chair Pascucci, if that's okay. Given that the construction is happening in the school, how are we going to minimize any disruptions to learning for the students and the staff?
Through the chair, I can start, and I know that we've got Manager of Planning Stephanie Cox as well with us this evening. But generally speaking, again, the rooms where the childcare spaces are being retrofitted from being existing classrooms are kind of in a sort of separate wing away from many of the classrooms in the school. And these schools were sort of selected with that in mind as being candidates for doing childcare space retrofits. So for the most part, we're able to have that work self-contained and apart from the sort of the main core areas of the school.
Trustee Corbett?
I wasn't sure if Manager Cox was going to be speaking, so I was just waiting.
Oh, through the chair, I just turned my camera on in the event that Superintendent Thomas had a direct question. But just to reiterate what he said, when the construction contract does go out in there, we do put a language to minimize disruption to the school. There may be work going on during the school day, but usually it's not, they avoid the digging and the loud noises and that kind of stuff during the daytime hours. But once again, that would all be through the construction contract.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Trustee Corbett. Are there any other questions? All right, seeing none. On to A5 declared interest items. Do any trustees have a declared interest item? I'll start off. I have a declared interest item. Item A6. I have a family member who's part of OECTA. Trustee Bruno Nika, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Same item. I have members 2026 and OECTA as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it's Mario Pascucci. I have the same issues, same declared interest items. I have a family member who's a member of OECTA. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Hoban, I saw your hand up as well. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have an interest. I have family members who are members of OECTA.
Thank you very much. Any others? Seeing none. Can I have a motion, please, to move the declared interest items to L, section L? Trustee Bruno Nika, thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none. Carried. A6, can I have approval of the minutes of Administration and Finance Committee meeting for June 7th, 2020, less the declared interest item? Trustee Sean Xavier. Thank you. Any opposed? See none. Thank you. Associate Director Del Bianco, go ahead, please.
Thank you again through the chair. There is some business arising. Just a couple of questions that came up in the June meeting, and Superintendent Thomas provided an update there. So that's available and for receipt.
Thank you. Can I have somebody move receipt, please, of the business of the section for business arising from the minutes? Trustee Darrell D'Souza, thank you. Any opposed? None. Carried. There are no pastors' remarks. Are there any awards and presentations? None. Thank you. No delegations, I'm assuming. On to E1, regular reports, the Ontario Catholic School Trustees Association reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleague, Trustee Del Rosario, I know that she's in the meeting. I'm not sure if we can hear her or not, but Just a bit of an update that there's ongoing discussions with on behalf of with OXTA and with our MPPs on various topics, and so we periodically get a report on what MPPs they've met with. So they're progressing well. You can imagine it's a big job to meet with all the MPPs, but they're doing well with that. We do have a OXTA board meeting this Saturday morning, very early. And we also have a retreat on Friday night. Luz and I also continue to send you updates and information from the president, Pat Daly. I hope you take the time to read the updates, because usually there's a lot of information in there about information that's important for trustees. So I hope that you will take the time to read the information that I'm sending, Luz and I are sending to you. Are there any questions? Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the trustees? Seeing none. Thank you very much for the report. Can I have somebody move receipt, please? Trustee
I can.
Bria Corbett, thank you. Any opposed? Carried. E2, good news items. Are there any good news items? Okay. Onwards.
Mr. Chairman, can I just jump in for 1 second?
Go ahead,
Good
Trustee Ullman,
news.
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm not speaking on behalf of everybody, but from my perspective, I think we had really great opening weeks with Dufferin Peel. I think I want to thank our staff, our senior staff, our administrators, and all of our educators for working so hard to get our schools open, especially our custodians and admin assistants for getting our schools open. Teachers have taken really great time to prepare their classrooms, and I'm amazed at how much work has been done to get our schools ready, and I think our students are delighted to be back. So I want to thank everybody, certainly on my behalf. Thank you so much.
Trustee Luz-Rosario, go ahead, please. Trustee De Rosario. Okay. We'll come back to you. We can't hear you, but Trustee D'Souza, go ahead, please. Trustee D'Souza, you're muted.
I'm sorry. This stopper report starts on page 23, and there's a handbook on page 25. It's a
Trustee D'Souza, we're still in the good news items section of the meeting. Okay.
I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Question, yeah.
Trustee Del Rosario, are you there? We can't hear you. If you'd like, you can forward your good news items to the recorder. Okay.
It's okay.
Oh, there you are.
It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
I can hear you now.
It's okay. It's earlier on. It was on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
No? Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Never mind.
Okay. If you have a good news item, you just forward it to the recorder. Thank you. Section F, Director, if you want to continue from there.
Chair, we just need approval of the good news items.
Oh, thank you very much. Can I have somebody move approval, please?
I move, Thomas.
Trustee Thomas, thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And again, through the chair, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our first Admin and Finance Committee meeting of the new school year. We move on to Section G, which are updates, information, and reports from administration for receipt. and prior to inviting Superintendent Thomas and General Manager Dobson to present the report, I ask for receipt of G1, Stop Our Transportation Update and Service Delivery.
Thank you. Mover is Trustee DeCosla. Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, I will invite General Manager Wendy Dobson to present this evening's report.
Thank you, Superintendent Thomas. Through the chair, good evening, everyone. On page 23 of the package, you will find the Student Transportation Update and Service Delivery Report. We'd like to welcome back all the students and all the school bus drivers to a new year, the 2022-23 school year. In preparation for this upcoming school year, both STOPR and STWDSTS are pleased to announce that they have a driver assigned for every route. All operators do have a satisfactory spare complement of drivers, with the exception of one operator. This operator does, however, have drivers in training and anticipates having a satisfactory spare complement by the middle of September. We will continue both consortia to work with the operators to ensure that any challenge that we review any challenges with driver retention. As we all know, every year new drivers that come in start off the school year and decide that this isn't really the job that they're looking to do. And we do have a number of drivers that tend to leave within the first couple of weeks. And it does take us a few weeks to recover from that. I would say by the end of September, we will be in much better shape as far as delays go because of driver shortage. Moving on to courtesy transportation, STOPR will be launching a pilot program to implement courtesy transportation 1 week earlier than in previous years. Schools can start to flag courtesy students the third week of September, starting on September 19th. Where possible, STOPR staff will start assigning these courtesy students the week of September 26th. Communication has been sent to all schools regarding these timelines. Once we go through this first year of a pilot implementing courtesy a week early, we will review whether or not we had to add students on for courtesy and then take them off because we have more eligible students come on board. So we want to make sure that doing this early implementation of courtesy actually works out well. So we'll do an assessment probably in late October and present it back to governance at the November meeting. Moving on to communications, STOPR has issued many communications to schools and their families ahead of the 2022-23 school year. STOPR staff have also developed a new school administration handbook that you will find on page 25 of the package. This handbook is a one-stop shop document that will conclude processes and procedures, covers any questions that schools may have regarding transportation. This will assist school administrators and staff with any questions or any ways that they can help parents sign on, log on, and get transportation information along with our procedures, processes, and frequently asked questions. We're very proud of this handbook. We've had a lot of great feedback from principals already, and hope that they find it a useful tool as they work their way through the school year. At this point, that concludes the STOPR STWDSTS transportation report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Wendy. I have a couple of hands here. So Trustee Daryl D'Souza, Trustee DeCosla, are there any others? Trustee Anika, anybody else? Okay then. Trustee D'Souza, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This book looks very good and very helpful. I just had one question about the book on page 3 of the book, which is page 27 of our pack. Under contact information, there's a big yellow box which says school use only. Please do not share. Now, is it only for school use? And if it is for school use, it's in the open agenda and it's currently on the website. So was that a typo?
Through the chair, although the handbook is considered for school use, There's nothing in this document that is confidential information. But it is meant for a school use handbook. However, there's valuable information in here for public as well.
Okay. So it's open to everyone, basically.
It is, but it is meant for schools to use as a tool.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Trustee DeCosta, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just my same point in reference to what Daryl has raised. I'm a bit curious about, I know this is not public, this is not private information, which is perfectly fine, but it's just on the process piece in terms of if parents, have questions, sometimes they don't go to Stopper. And if they see the list of school bus providers, that's usually the first people they call. They're really not familiar about Stopper. So that would be my only concern, that they're calling the bus company, getting all types of answers, and in some cases making things just a little bit worse. Will this handbook be posted anywhere online, or is it just shown tonight, or obviously our approval or consideration or feedback, and then it's not provided on any public website or anything, but just left for the use of principals?
Through the chair, there was a couple of questions in there. First of all, just going back to the contact information. So all parents do have access from our website of all the school bus operator contact information, because students leave things on the school bus and things like that. So they do have that access on our website to contact any school bus operators. In most cases, if they're calling about their transportation information and happen to call the school bus operator first, the school bus operator has been directed to have them contact StopR directly. So there is a communication transition there that we've already educated our school bus operators with.
Okay.
Sorry, and I apologize, Trustee DeCosta. What was your second question?
Is this report publicly posted anywhere?
The report is on our website, but it's on Bus Planner Web for the schools to access. It is not put on our public website as of this time, and it has been approved by our governance committee, StopR governance committee already.
Okay, great. And if there is a protocol in place for our bus companies already who've been notified that any questions come in terms of bus routing or stops, then they know that they've been instructed to redirect it back to Stopper. And that's really what I want to make sure of, because I don't want any information that is incorrect or then comes back to the parent, goes back to principal, comes to me, goes to Stopper. So it just saves a lot of trouble. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee DeCosta. Trustee Anika, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just with regards to the early start on the courtesy ridership, I know that parents, if they get on to that in that pilot, they're going to be ecstatic, and they're going to be just as unhappy if they have to come off the courtesy ridership. What provisions have we made with parents to ensure that they understand what the ramifications may be to a student coming in, and the fact that their child may end up having to be taken off the bus and no longer granted courtesy ridership? Because once, and I think we've all experienced it, once a parent believes that their child is on, they believe that their child is on. So I just want to make sure that parents understand, and we've given them that understanding of what, because we've started early, this is what may, or it could be actually at any time of the year, but in this particular case, because it's a pilot, it's a week early. Could staff comment, please?
Through the chair, our courtesy transportation procedure and our form actually indicates that it may be that a student that applies for courtesy transportation and is granted courtesy transportation may need to come off the bus if an eligible student is assigned. So that's taken care of when they sign the form right at the beginning of requesting courtesy transportation. So, and the other thing too that StopR is doing, one of the strategies that we're going to work on is rather than assign everybody all at once, which is just not possible for us, we're going to take a look at the schools that have the least amount of change that occurs. So those that don't have a lot of new students coming in, we'll start with assigning courtesy for those schools first. Some of our larger schools that maybe have a lot more movement, a lot more new homes and residential housing coming up. We'll put them near the end of the assigning of the courtesy, just so that we can get started on the process. The process overall is still going to take us several weeks to complete, as there's thousands of students that request courtesy transportation, but we will take the opportunity to look at the schools with the least amount of impact or chance of them coming back off first and start with those schools.
And my second question, Mr. Chairman, if I could just go back, go back to the question that Trustee D'Souza asked regarding the contact information school use only. Does the staff think that would be confusing for our staff or anybody in general if it says, and I'll apologize because I have to go in and out, but school use only, do not share. And to me, that literally means do not share. So I kind of take it literally. I'm wondering if staff feels that may cause a lot of confusion at both ends. You know, parents are saying, well, I shouldn't have this. Should I use it? And staff saying, well, I have it. Should I share it or not? So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Can staff comment, please?
Through the chair, so it's just this box only. It has to do with the phone number. So we do have a direct line for schools to contact us that parents would generally not use. Parents have called in on that line, but generally it's meant for schools. And then we have an emergency phone number line if there is any kind of an incident or accident or emergency that may occur. And it's just that we ask schools not to give those phone numbers out to parents. I can make an adjustment here if at all possible. The package, I believe, has already gone out though, correct? Associate Director Del Bianco?
So through the chair, I believe it has, but in revised versions of it, I'm sure we can make the appropriate updates.
Okay.
Thank you. We can make that adjustment.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about confusion at both ends. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Unica. Are there any other questions? Trustee Breer-Carwick, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair. So just regarding the statement on page 23 of the agenda, as a result, schools can start to flag courtesy students the week of September 19th. I didn't interpret that as that was select schools. So can you please confirm, like, how many schools are going to be in this pilot, and will we know which schools? Because personally, we're going to get complaints why this school wasn't chosen or that school. So is this a pilot for all of our schools?
Through the chair, yes. Sorry. When we say pilot program, it's pilot because we're backing up the process by 1 week compared to previous years. All schools will have the opportunity to flag courtesy students starting the week of September 19th. So all schools will go through the number of applications that they've received for courtesy transportation, flag them in the system, and then StopR will start assigning the following week, the week of the 26th. So the pilot is just that normally we wouldn't start flagging students till the last week of September, and StopR wouldn't start assigning until the first week of October. We are just backing it up 1 week and we're calling it a pilot because we need to assess whether or not it's been of value or actually a deterrent, backing it up by 1 week once we see whether or not we've had to remove any students.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification. And through the chair, so just regarding where it says a communication's been sent to all schools regarding these timelines. So the communication I'm seeing from my school communities has been what it has been before, that courtesy seat riding is not assigned until, mid to late October. There has been no communication that I've seen. So just speaking for Mississauga North, at least to the parent community. So maybe the communication's been sent to administrators, but that information's not been shared with school families. And in that regard, you may not have the uptake or the interest, I guess, by the parent communities to have sent it early, because I'm not sure the parent communities are even aware of this, just through the chair as feedback.
Through the chair, if I may comment.
Go ahead, please.
So through the chair, the communication actually went out this morning to all schools. Okay. And just so that trustees are aware, parents send in their courtesy forms the first day of school. Schools then retain them and hold on to them. They don't start flagging them until the third week, until usually the fourth week, but now the third week of September. So parents submit them right at the beginning of school. And it's up now that schools have received the communication, I'm sure further communication will go out to families for any courtesy, anyone wishing to apply for courtesy transportation.
So my last question through the chair.
Go ahead.
Would be perhaps then, instead of us relying on individual schools to send out individual communication to their parent communities, that perhaps that needs to be centrally done, so that at least I want to avoid complaints from parents saying they didn't know, they didn't hear, it's only been 1 week of school. And if they missed a deadline, and because it's been moved up 1 week, which is great, I just want to make sure that they're informed and everybody has the same opportunity to apply. That just given the change in timeline and given that it's tight, because if the communication just went to schools today and they're going to start flagging them September 19th, that's very soon. So
if I may, through the chair, we will work with Bruce Campbell in the Corporate Communications Office to sync up the communications that have already gone out to the schools, so that we can put out a more general notice to the entire Dufferin Peel school community and families at large.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Trustee Luz de Rosario.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I cannot turn on my camera. But if I could just ask through the chair, could you just go over again our policy when a special needs child and a sibling wants to ride together? Because sometimes we have requests that they would like their sibling to go with their brother or sister that's in a special needs category.
Through the chair, I'd be happy to answer that question. So when it comes to special education transportation, there is no courtesy on special education buses. However, if there is a sibling request and the sibling is eligible to receive transportation to the same school, then we allow that sibling to ride on the special education bus. That's the only exception that we make, because they're both eligible. But if the sibling is not eligible for transportation, then courtesy is not provided on a special education bus.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, I just have a follow-up to that, because I think a year ago or so, I had a request because the sibling with a special request would like to ride with their older sibling who is not eligible. Can we do a case-by-case review on those things?
So through the chair, maybe I'll start on this one, and then I can hand it over to General Manager Dobson. But I would note that we receive a significant amount of requests. StopR, that is, receives a significant amount of requests from both our board and the Peel board for these kinds of courtesy requests, courtesy seat requests. There just isn't the capacity to be able to offer everyone that seat, and to try and make case-by-case determinations could be viewed by some as being unfair if we were to accept some and decline others. But I'll turn it over to General Manager Dobson for her thoughts as well.
Through the chair, I agree with Superintendent Thomas that we really do receive a significant amount of requests. I guess if there is extenuating circumstances, then we do have an appeal process that parents can apply to with their case. However, it really would have to be some kind of extenuating circumstance. But as a general, as Superintendent Thomas has mentioned, we don't allow for that. We just don't have the capacity to assign all of these requests that come in.
Right, I understand, because I did receive quite a few requests a couple of years ago and even last year. Okay, thank you very much. So at least we know that there's an appeal portion on it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, General Manager Dobson and Superintendent Thomas.
Thank you, Trustee Rosario. Trustee Brunica, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to tell you, I'm relieved that General Manager Dobson agrees with the Superintendent Thomas. I would have been flattened if she said I disagree with him. But no. But just on the courtesy ridership, I don't want to talk about the courtesy ridership because I think we'll end up talking about that for quite a while. But my understanding, and General Manager Dobson, if you could clarify for me, or staff could clarify for me, we have a scenario. My understanding was that staff would take the information and then would implement the courtesy ridership after Thanksgiving. That was always my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Now it would appear, with Thanksgiving being on or around the 10th of October, sometimes it varies a few days here and there, but the 10th of October, we're almost 2 weeks prior to that original date of after Thanksgiving. Has something else changed, or am I misunderstanding? Can staff clarify for me?
So through the chair, because several years ago when I was in Stop R and left and now have come back, but when I was here the first time, that was the case a long time ago. We have slowly started to progress because we're clearing up calls. We're getting students assigned faster. We have better technology. Because we're improving on getting through the changes a little bit faster now, we have the capacity to start backing it up. So probably about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, we backed it up so that the schools would have the ability to flag students the last week of September, but Stop R still wouldn't start assigning until the beginning of October. And we would take pretty much the whole month of October to complete the process because there were so many students between the two school boards. Now, because again, we're starting to see some improvement of getting those changes done, although because this is the first year back from the pandemic, we'll see how that goes. But we are starting to improve on getting through all of those changes. We wanted to ensure, because we know that courtesy is a hot topic in the sense that parents really want to get on the school bus where they can for courtesy transportation. And we want to try and service that for them. So we wanted to try this year, because I've been saying to the trustees that we will try to back it up, but then the pandemic hit. So now that we're kind of back to a new norm, we want to make sure that we honor that, at least trying it and backing it up one more week. So that's why we'll try it for this year. We'll do an assessment. If it goes well, we'll continue this way. If it doesn't go well and we find that we're de-assigning students that applied for courtesy, then we'll revert back to the 4th week of September. But we won't go back to after Thanksgiving. We'll never go back there. We'll keep it within the month of September, at least starting the process. But we do want to see if this helps improve getting the students on a little bit quicker.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, to staff, will staff be bringing an update report, whatever you want to call it, to trustees to say, this is what we found. This is, we had 100 requests, and of those 2% had to come off the bus, or whatever that number is, will staff be coming back and saying how that pilot went and what we're going to do for next year if this is successful?
So through the chair, if I may, I would say that just to reiterate what General Manager Dobson said earlier, the intent is to evaluate the results of the pilot this year based on the earlier timeline for flagging and assigning courtesy riders. And then a report will definitely be taken to the Stop Our Governance Committee at its November meeting. After that has taken place, we'd be happy to provide all trustees with an update, and we can do that through a report or through issues and events.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, staff.
Thank you, Trustee Hoban. See your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say a big thanks to Superintendent Thomas and Manager Dobson and staff, because we've been talking about courtesy ridership and improving courtesy ridership for several years. And of course, over the last few years, we haven't had any courtesy ridership. We haven't had any transportation. But so I think this is a really great thing if we were able to get it on the road sooner. And I just want to say thanks. I think you've been listening to us, so that's a good thing. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Trustee Hoban. And are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none. We go on to G2, Stop Our Governance Committee minutes.
And through the chair, we're looking for receipt of those minutes. And should there be any questions, both Superintendent Thomas and General Manager Dobson are here to address those questions.
Okay, thank you. Can I have somebody move the minutes, please? Trustee DeCosta, thank you. Any opposed? See none. Carried. Are there any questions? Seeing none. On to G3, proposed secondary school fields, municipal partnership, Superintendent Matthew Thomas.
Through the chair, prior to inviting.
Receipt, yes. Can I have somebody move receipt, please? Trustee Brunanica, thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none, please go ahead.
Thank you. And through the chair, I would be remiss if I didn't also extend my sincere thank you to General Manager Dobson for her willingness to really push hard on advancing the timelines for courtesy ridership. So I just wanted to make sure that that was captured as well. So through the chair, this evening, starting on page 54 of your agenda package, is a report entitled Proposed Secondary School Fields, Municipal Partnerships. And I'm going to invite Manager of Planning Stephanie Cox to present the report. But just before I do, I just wanted to note that trustees would already be aware of the ongoing work between Dufferin Peel and the City of Mississauga with respect to trying to redevelop the Annika Park land, or Annika Park field, that is adjacent to Ascension of Our Lord Catholic Secondary School. And there's been much work that's been ongoing for a number of years in that regard. And so this evening, Manager Cox is going to provide an update on that, and also provide some information about another proposal that has come to Dufferin Peel from the City of Brampton. So over to you, Manager Cox.
Thank you and good evening. Through the chair, there are two parts to this report. The first part provides an update on the proposed partnership for a sports field on City of Mississauga lands at Annika Park to support and enhance the sports programs at Ascension of Our Lord Secondary School. As Superintendent Thomas has already indicated, trustees are aware that board staff have been working with the City of Mississauga since early 2019, as a matter of fact, to develop a facility fit that would be supported by both parties with minimal impact to the surrounding residential neighborhood, while still maintaining municipal zoning requirements and working around constraints related to the adjacent railway and the existing play structure in the park. While these constraints do not feasibly support a full-size track and field, city staff have recently shared a plan that provides a 4-lane track, an artificial turf field with a major soccer pitch, a high jump area, and associated lighting. The proposed plan is illustrated on page 58 of the agenda. The majority of the facilities would be located on City of Mississauga lands. The estimated cost of constructing this project is approximately $3.13 million. And Dufferin Peel would be required to contribute 50% of those costs, which amount to approximately $1.56 million. There have been ongoing discussions with community leaders that have indicated the possibility of sponsorship funding. Unfortunately, to date, no sponsors have contacted the City of Mississauga. There have also been ongoing discussions with the local MPP regarding financial support. However, and once again, no funding has been forthcoming to date. Staff will continue to pursue funding options or funding opportunities for this project. So the second part of the report would be new to trustees, and it does provide information on a recent request from the City of Brampton to partner with Dufferin Peel on the enhancement of the track and field facilities at St. Edmund Campion Secondary School. The City of Brampton has expressed interest in partnering with the board during the last 2 rounds of capital priorities, specifically on the Mount Pleasant Secondary School site. Now, the current uncertainty for approval of the Mount Pleasant Secondary School project has prompted Brampton staff to explore other potential projects while these funds that they have allocated are available. Upon review of existing fields in the northwest quadrant of Brampton and in relation to existing Brampton facilities, St. Edmund Campion Secondary School was identified as the prime location to upgrade existing facilities, which could include, but not definitely not limited to, a synthetic track, artificial turf field, perhaps a new scoreboard, some new bleachers, water bottle filling stations, fencing, and landscaping. Now, this site is adjacent to Cassie Campbell Recreation Center, so there are some synergies there, and it provides ample parking to accommodate large events on the site. The City of Brampton has indicated their commitment to share all costs with the board equally. At this time, costs have not been assigned, as a site design will need to be mutually agreed upon, similar to the process that we've been working with Mississauga on for Ascension. Notwithstanding, board staff would also need to explore funding options for this proposal as well. So following further investigation, staff will forward potential funding options for both of these projects to a future meeting of trustees. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions trustees may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I have a list right now. I have Trustee Hoban, Trustee Anika, Trustee Thomas. Anybody else? Okay, then Trustee Hoban, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the difference between, through the chair, the difference between these 2 projects would be the Edmund Campion project is on our Dufferin Peel property, and the Ascension of our Lord is on city property. That's number 1. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
And so this has been an issue that we've been dealing with now with staff and with the community and with Trustee Thomas and the MPP, and, you know, everybody and their mother's gotten involved, and we've really made no progress. And the main issue, well, I'm going to just say a couple of things. The first thing is I'm not sure the status of all of our secondary schools, but I do believe all of our secondary schools, except this school, has a field. It might be a dirt field, it might be a turf field, it might be, but they all have a field. This school does not have any field whatsoever. And it's because of historically, it was an old elementary school that was made into a secondary school and then built upon, and it has nothing. So there is definitely an inequity for this particular school and this community, and especially for these students. The difference is, if you look back at what we've done with other secondary schools, and I'm going to use Loyola as a model. When the city, Loyola would have had a regular old field attached to the new building. Whatever was the status at the time, it could have been a dirt field, I don't know. When the city came to us to put that field in, which is now a great, a track, finished track, the deal was the city would pay for it, and the city would have dibs to use that field in the evenings and on weekends. And Loyola would have the use of the field during the school day. And then we would permit it out if we need to use it for a football game at nighttime, et cetera. So there's a lot of permutations around our secondary schools and how they are used and how they were built and what they look like now. But this school has Zippo nothing. The problem with it is the fire has been fed by the local counselor who has really demonized Dufferin Peel in the public by saying that we refuse to fund this project, and as well by the MPP, who has virtually promised that he would get us the funding, the funding that Dufferin Peel needed to support this field. Trustee Thomas spoke to the Minister of Education. Trustee Thomas spoke to the Premier of Ontario, and they all promised. And then guess what? An election happened. And then guess what? They have a huge majority. And guess what? They've disappeared in helping us with this particular field. So I just wanted to give some, color to this conversation, because I do know when it jumps off the page that this is not our land. But it's a very strange situation in that this is a particular secondary school with a lot of talented athletes in it that have absolutely Zippo place to practice or play a game or anything, which is really inequitable in a Catholic school system. So I'm going to stop there. I might have more to say, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Hoban. Trustee Anika, then I have Trustee Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, thank you to staff for the report. I can understand the excitement of somebody wanting to put money in, at least pay 50% to give our students something that they currently don't have. And I also understand the challenges that we have with respect to getting the money, thus the comments that were made by Trustee Hoban. When I read the article that Trustee Hoban was referring to, I was shocked because the person that was making the comments in council was actually chair of the Peel board at one time. And I thought that that person would have known what the scoop was with respect to funding. But having said all that, I appreciate and I'm excited for the Ascension community. I'm excited for the Campion community. But I am a little bit disappointed, and I will not hold my disappointment in that I believed that when we were going to talk about secondary schools and fields, we were going to talk about all of them, because Trustee Del Rosario and I have a school that's a sports schism school that has been talking to us, and we have continued to go through staff the right way that our Trustee Del Rosario and I believe that it was the right way of doing it. And I'll be very honest with you, I was very disappointed that the report came and it only identified 2 schools when, and Trustee Hoban's right, Ascension may not have a field. And as I had a comment with a colleague earlier just before dinner, we have schools like St. Paul that has a postage stamp for a field, and every time they have to play sports anywhere, they have to go somewhere else to do it, not at their school. So having said that, my question to staff is, my comment at first is thank you to staff for the report, very detailed, very outlined, with everything that I wanted to know, with the exception of what about the other secondary schools that we've been talking about over and over, and what is the plan, and when are we going to get that report so that we can go back to our communities at one point in time in the latter part of this year or next to say, here's the plan, here's the report, this is what we're going to do, this is what's going to happen going forward. Can staff comment on that for me, please?
Trustee Anika, I see Trustee Associate Director Del Bianco's hand up. So go ahead, please.
So thank you, and through the chair, and I can start, and then I know Superintendent Thomas, Manager Cox are here as well. The big vision and the big picture for all of our secondary school sites is to develop a revitalization plan for all of the fields. We've got fields in all realms of condition. As we mentioned throughout, or I guess the latter part of last year, we've engaged an architect. The architect has been working with our landscape architect. They've been working with Manager Cox and the planning team to do an assessment of all the fields. So what we committed to in the past and what trustees will see shortly is here's field A, B, C, and D. This is the condition of that field. This is what can be put on that field. This is the cost associated with all of that. Because what part of that report wanted to do was dispel the myth that every field could be an artificial turf field, or every field can have a dome, or every field can have light. So first we've taken kind of an inventory of what we have. We need to clearly identify and articulate what can be constructed on that field, what can't be constructed on that field. And from there, we build a revitalization plan. Why these two fields specifically have been identified outside of that follow-up report, and I can completely understand that, is these are municipalities that came to us and said, we have capital funding that we'd like to invest in a field at this site. So it's not us necessarily saying, pick this school or pick that school. They've come forward. So if you're looking at an artificial turf field of any kind, or a dome potentially later on, you're looking in the mid or low to mid $3 million mark. And if somebody, if the municipality is willing to put in half of that, I think it's within our right to explore that, even if it happens to be outside of the long-term revitalization. It's not, this report was not intended to be kind of a slight to any of the other schools, but what we have to do, just like we do with every bit of funding we receive from anybody, is that we have to capitalize on it when it's available. And some of these funds from municipalities are very time sensitive because they have a different fiscal year than we do, and they have to make sure that they allocate those funds, and we don't want those funds to go elsewhere. So while we highlight these two, that's not to say that the bigger term, the bigger plan is to come forward to trustees, just like we do with everything, and say, here's the revitalization plan for our fields. These schools, we can do this to realistically, and this is what we'll do in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And we're not close to there yet. First stage is going to be here's the report, here's what the total investment costs, here's where our potential funding sources are. And as Hoban mentioned, while this report's in front of trustees today, there still is no funding source for our half of these projects. I know that the report does mention proceeds of disposition as a potential funding source, but that still requires ministry approval, as we've just experienced. So we brought this forward today because it is time sensitive, and it is because partners came to us and identified the schools and identified what they're willing to put in. But there will be a subsequent report that includes all the condition of all secondary schools, the fields there, and what potentially we can do. And then we'd build a strategy that we'd roll out over, depending on the costs, roll out over, a year or 2 or 5 or whatever the case may be. So we haven't lost sight of the big picture. We just had to highlight these because there was money on the table that we feel that we could take advantage of immediately.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Before you do that, Trustee Nika, does Superintendent Thomas or Manager Cox want to add to that?
Through the chair, I think Associate Director Del Bianco covered the main points in terms of why these two specific projects now. Again, as he correctly noted, we are reviewing the status of all of our secondary school sports fields, and that work continues. We want to bring that report forward, but we also want to do it at a time when we know that the information contained therein is comprehensive enough and in a format that we believe accurately represents all of the information that we need to share. And so I know that work is still ongoing. We're not quite there yet, but we are working with the landscape architect that Associate Director Del Bianco referred to. And he's also right about the timing. I mean, I think that is the larger concern here, is the fact that the city of Mississauga and the city of Brampton have come forward with specific funding amounts for these two particular sites. And it would be, it's absolutely in our best interest to at least consider them, which is why we've brought this report forward this evening.
Thank you. Manager Cox, I saw your hand up. Did you want to add?
Through the chair, thank you. I was just going to confirm that the plant department and planning are working with the architect as we speak to put together the document. It has gone through a few iterations. We've gone back and forth because we want to make sure that it is a comprehensive document. And, the first iteration wasn't comprehensive enough. So we are working towards that. So I just wanted to confirm that we are right now, as we speak, working on that document.
Thank you. Sorry, Trustee Ainika, go ahead, please continue with your follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to staff, each of you for the comment. And I get the funding scenario. So, and I appreciate it 100%. When does staff anticipate that the report come back, a comprehensive report? Number one, and number two, I'm assuming, I never assume, but I'm assuming that, because staff comes back with this comprehensive report and it says school A it could get, this, and this, that there would be significant community consultation versus the board saying, that school gets a dome with turf field. I'm assuming that's the case. I just want to make sure that is the case. So I have the two questions: community consultation, the second one, and the first, when would the report be coming back?
Through the chair, if I can, I'll defer the report coming back to Manager Cox because she's been working closely with the architect. But I think step one is kind of taking an inventory of what we have, and step two, I think what we need to do is develop a plan so that if we go out on our own, right, if we can't find any more partners and we have to revitalize fields, I think we need to kind of strategically place fields throughout the system so that our schools, if they have to, can share an artificial turf field or a natural turf field, because in some cases an artificial turf field won't fit anywhere on some of the fields, right? So I think when we look at it and we kind of consult as a group, everybody here on screen, the vision has to be, we can't have every single natural turf field in the far north or the far east, right? It's or the eastern part of the region. It has to be what works best for all the schools in that area, right? So that way they can work together. That way our schools aren't going, maybe to another neighboring school to use their field. So we have to see what we have, what works there, and then in consultation with everyone here, we have to develop a plan that we all feel comfortable with, because the solution is probably not going to be, only because we know that we can't fit them everywhere, artificial turf fields everywhere. And in some cases, the fields are too small to fit a football field. So it might be just a soccer pitch. So I think we need to look at how close one school is to another secondary school, what that school has and what this school has, and how to keep the balance so that we support all of the Dufferin Peel community. The second step of that, anything we do, even though we can propose all we like for whatever field, there is a whole other level of municipal approvals that's required in consultation, not only with our own school communities, but with the neighboring community. Because while we may want a dome and lights, as we experienced at Annika Park, municipal staff may say that's not going to work there. You're too close to a fence, you're too close to a hydro line, you're too close to whatever the case may be. So it's going to be a bit of a step-by-step holding hands with the municipality, with our school communities, and with ourselves as we develop this plan and then executing the plan. With regards to timelines, Manager Cox, I believe, has the timelines for when the report will come forward.
Through the chair, there have been a number of iterations. We've recently just sent back some additional comments. So I think that once we receive the next iteration of the report, we will be in a better position to provide you with a timeline of when we can come to the board. I don't want to promise anything because we keep going back and forth, and we want to ensure that we're providing as much information as possible and that it's presented in a clear and concise manner. We're not there yet. We've gone back. They're working on it now. So I think that once we get the next iteration back from them, I'll work through Superintendent Thomas and Associate Director to provide some more timelines to trustees, if that's acceptable.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, my last question, and I'll apologize to everybody, because the conversation was not about all the fields, but just specifically the 2 fields. But in regards to the detailed report that will be coming, I'll say in the new year for the sake of an argument, has there been, I'll use the school straight out. Trustee Mario Pascucci and I represent St. Paul that has a postage stamp for a field, but the city of Mississauga has land beside it. So when staff looks at that, have they kind of considered, well, if nothing, this is what you get, which isn't much. If the city of Mississauga works collectively with Dufferin Peel, then we'll be able to do this on those 2 pieces of land. I understand that it's political and it's not an arena maybe that staff would play in, but Trustee Pascucci and I play in that field, and we could play in that field with the local councillor as we had in the past with, at the time, the associate director. So I'm kind of wondering if that has been taken into account when that report is being done, because that's going to be the first question I would ask. If St. Paul has whatever they have, and it's no bigger than what it is today, which isn't much, and then say, well, have we explored this with the city? Maybe what we can do, and I'm just looking for direction, Trustee Pascucci and I can meet with the local councillor after October, and say, in the past, this is what was discussed and kind of viewed upon. And what do you think, and what does the city think about opening it up? Because Cawthron Arena is right there. You have the amenities of an arena. Now you have the amenities of a field of some sort. So that's kind of the thing that I don't want to be left out, because it's extremely important in the scheme of how maybe that particular secondary, or any secondary school for that matter, may look like in the plan. So I have no issue dealing with that, like politically, like having that conversation, politics to politics, and then coming back to staff or involving staff at one point as we did in the past. It's my concern that I don't want something that important. It would never be intentionally left out, but you don't see it, and you may not see it for what it could be, as opposed to what it is, which isn't very much. I'm looking for a comment.
So through the chair, I'm happy to try and respond to that question, Trustee Anika. So generally speaking, with respect to the review of all the secondary school sports fields, we've asked the contractor to kind of take a 30,000-foot view of the specific boundaries of the property that we own, the field that we might own at a particular school, and also to provide information about any amenities that may be available nearby. So, for example, let's say in Campion, as Manager Cox indicated in the report that was presented, there is a municipal community center, Cassie Campbell, that is situated right next door. So the report will have information about some of those amenities that are offered by the municipality in the property that's adjacent, and speak to some information about some of the amenities, again, that are situated nearby. What I will note, though, is that, and Manager Cox can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe the report's going to include any specific information about, well, Dufferin Peel, you would be well served by, asking the municipality, the neighboring municipality, to encroach on their field. and sort of, examine opportunities sort of unilaterally. I think that would be a discussion that, if we as staff and reviewing the report and knowing and with our knowledge of what may be situated next door, investigate and assess that there may be an opportunity to pursue something in partnership with, let's say, City of Mississauga, we'd be happy to take that forward and bring that to trustees. But at this time, I think we're trying to stay within the bounds of the sort of the parameters of what we own at our school sites, and kind of, again, speak at a bit of a higher level about some of the amenities that might be located in and around that particular field.
To this point, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Associate Director, do you want to make comment to Trustee Unikas?
Yeah. So through the chair, just to build on what Superintendent Thomas is saying, what the report is not going to include. It's not going to include a list from 1 through to 15 and what order we're going to do fields in. I think there's a lot more consultation that needs to happen before we ever get to that point. I'd never put that in front of anybody without any consultation. I think what the report does, just like a lot of the long-term facilities master plan, the other reports that we put together, is it provides all of us with the information that we need to go kind of our separate ways and start doing and having those conversations, whether it's with municipal staff or with counselors or with school communities, to say, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do. Any report that would suggest encroaching on neighboring property, whether it's owned by the municipality or anybody else, is probably not in our best interest, only because they would not be aware of that report, or they would say, really, you're going to do this or that. So I think that's work that's done after the fact. What the report will come back as, and it's a public report, so it's available for everybody, is this is what the condition of the field is like at, you pick the school. This is what can be put on that field. This is what can't be put on that field. And these are what are kind of the neighboring amenities in that area. Once we have the kind of the fundamental information in front of all of us, that's when we start either reaching out to the local municipalities and say, this is what we can't do, do you have any desire to partner at this particular school or this particular school, because this is what we can build and this is what we can't build, and then we build the plan from there. So I don't want any trustee to believe that there'll be a list of schools from 1 to 15 or 1 to 25 or whatever the case may be, identifying here's schools in year 1, here's schools year 15, or whatever the case may be. That I think that's still a little further down the road. Really, we just need to arm ourselves with all the appropriate information, because I think if we go to most school communities, everybody wants an artificial turf field and a track. And I think what this report does through the use of an architect clearly identifies that, no, you can't do that. If we're going to do anything at this school, this is what we can do, and this is what we can't do. And then we start building a plan around that.
And I was wondering if staff, when Associate Director Del Bianco said, everybody wants a field, everybody wants a track. I'm wondering if underneath that track you could put a 3,000 seat ice rink, if that's at all possible. It would be most appreciated.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
With size that go up for stands. Trustee Mario Pascucci had a comment to this point or a question to this point.
Yeah, just very briefly. I hope that part of the discussion with the city, and I'm sure it would be because you're very thorough, Daniel, with your team, is the idea of land trades if necessary, to expand what we have, or to obviously operate the field as best we can. Essentially looking at the city, because I know St. Paul is a good idea, or thought about transferring properties, things of that nature. I wanted to keep that in the context. We don't need a response now, but if you wish to, you're very welcome, of course.
Well, through the chair, I know that Manager Cox and team have had to work through that exact same scenario. So, I mean, at the end of the day, whenever there's a partnership, you just need a willing partner, right? So we can go out and we can connect and speak on whether it's a trustee counselor level or a staff level, but unless there's a willing partner on the other end, we may have to go at some of these alone. But everything's on the table.
Okay. Trustee Pascucci, is everything okay? Thank you. Trustee Unica, are you done with your questions? Okay.
I'm good, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to staff.
Thank you. I have Trustee Thomas next, and then Trustee Hoban. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, Trustee Thomas, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. thank you again, Matthew and Stephanie, to bringing this detailed report. You were involved with this for a long time. And this issue, especially Ascension of Our Lord, started 2019. And discussion going on through years and years. And we had several meetings with our staff and the city staff, councillor, MVP, and the ministerial level. We had so many meetings with MVP and community leaders and our staff and city staff, and community leaders went to City Hall to having a delegation, and they have a presentation in the City Hall also. I had a couple of occasions to meet with Minister Lache and Premier Doug Ford regarding this issue, and they promised before the election, they promised they will match the city's contribution. So that is half of the cost, that is for $1.556 million. After the election, again, I had a meeting with the MVP, and he said still that promise is on. I think we are going to we can get that money. The issue is how soon we can proceed this issue, this matter. According to there are private funders, donors to not, they don't want to give it to the city. They are willing to donate to the school boards. So that is the only, there is a problem between the donor and the city and the school board, one issue. But without this donors, the province will fund according to the Premier and Education Minister's promise. I hope we will get that funding. But the community is very much upset. That is the different field having all the high schools, except Ascension of Our Lord school, we don't have a track and field. There's a very much talented students in that school. Because of we don't have any track and field or any sports field to carry on, many students moving towards the public schools. Lincoln Alexander having a beautiful track and field is start building now. Okay, so once if we are not doing anything in Ascension of Our Lord, most of our sports field students moving to public schools. That is, it's a big loss for us as a different field. So I want what we can do. Hope we have to meet with again the city staff. Matthew and Stephanie, you know, the city staff, they are very much, they are in upper hand to help us to build that. There are also pressure from the communities. Hope we can do something. We can get our students that sports field benefit for Ascension of School. What it, I don't know, Matthew, you do recently, do you hear anything from the city staff?
So through the chair, to your question, Trustee Thomas, what I would say is that in my recent exchange of correspondence with the director of the department that has been working with us on this project, they continue to reiterate and reaffirm their support for the capital contribution to come from the city of Mississauga. They have also indicated that they would be willing to work with any sort of application for direct funding from the province. All we have to do is ask for their support, and they would be willing to do that. Again, the land belongs to them. So, you know, we have to take that into consideration, which is why we have put that in front of them, but they have indicated that they understand the challenge of the Ascension community, wanting that amenity to be built and to be built as quickly as possible. And so they have indicated their willingness to continue to support us, and they have been supportive throughout this process. I think we need to keep in mind that the city staff at a staff level have been extremely supportive and willing to work with us throughout this entire process.
See, okay, one of the meeting with the city staff in front of the premier was there, and premier told the city staff also, we want to start both project at the same time. That means Lincoln Alexander Field and Ascension of our field. That was the promise premier made it in front of the city staff. Even Caroline Parish was there. So hope that promise will work out. But Lincoln Alexander, the project is already started. And recently, Sharon Hoban told us, and she had several meetings with the councillor. She told in the public, we are not doing anything. Dufferin Peel is not doing anything. Blame all comes to us as a Dufferin Peel. So we have to correct this information to the public.
So staff want to make any comments? Okay.
That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no comment from staff, we can go on to Trustee Hoban's question. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trustee Thomas is correct in that, well, he's correct on everything he just said, but in that one of the issues that we do have from Catholic education perspective is that the counselor is putting all the blame on Dufferin Peel, even though it's not our land. It's like me going to deciding I'm going to build a swimming pool in my neighbor's backyard. And I'm not going to ask my neighbor, I'm just going to build a swimming pool. So it's the exact same thing. The city councilor has just made it in her way. She's, putting all the blame on Dufferin Peel, which is, incorrect. And it is true that, we're losing our students. We have very faithful Catholic parents and very faithful parents at this school they've had a very strong school council. They've worked very hard for the community, but we're going to lose these students, and we're losing them because there's no track and field. There's no field at all for any kind of sport. So, and Lincoln Alexander is getting a state-of-the-art sports field. So that has been funded by Peel Board, and they've received federal money, I believe. I can be corrected on that, and also the city of Mississauga. So, but the one thing that I do believe, and perhaps staff can help me with this, one of the last meetings we had with the community members was that they were very unhappy with the plan that the city had come up with. We're very unhappy that not all the land was being used, at the park beside it wasn't being used with this track. They felt that this was a poor representation of a plan. I know that they want a dome and lighting, and the councilor has said that that's just not going to happen because the neighbors in the area aren't going to put up with it. So in terms of the actual plan, I believe there's been consultation, absolutely, but where are we going with the plan in terms of all that feedback?
So through the chair, I can start. I know Manager Cox has her hand up, so I will begin. So through the chair, there were some questions asked during the community meeting around that particular aspect of why were some parts of Annika Park not being fully utilized. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is there are certain setback requirements that the city has from a planning perspective on the site, in terms of making sure that any use of the field isn't abutting any of the neighbors that are sort of backing onto the field. So that's one issue. There are a number of other planning related concerns that they identified. And it is a very tight site. I think the reality, and I think, I think Trustee Holden's aware, it is a very tight site. It is not entirely large enough of a site to be able to build a full 8-lane oval with the just based on the way that the land is configured. So city staff were able to work with us to put together a bit of a compromise solution, which still allows for a multi-lane oval and a straightaway, which would support the track program, as well as having a full-size soccer field that could be developed on the site. So is it perfect? No, I don't believe it is. But based on the site, the parameters of the site, the constraints of the site, the understanding was that this was likely the best scenario that we could agree upon. And again, to try and support what the Ascension community was looking for. But I'll pause there, and I'll perhaps ask Manager Cox to weigh in as well.
Thank you, through the chair. So I think Superintendent Thomas did a very good job explaining that, there are a number of constraints. There's the railway lands right behind the school. There's the play structure. That came up at one of the meetings, and the city made a valid point. This is a community park. They're not prepared to remove that play structure because that play structure is used by the community. So that's another constraint. There have been a number, the city staff, I really have to give city staff credit, their parks department or their parks planning staff credit, because they've been through a number of iterations of this plan. Originally, they did look at a track. It was very tight, and we couldn't get a dome on there as well. Then it went to just a soccer pitch with some other amenities. What they've done is they've basically compromised, and they've been able to fit, as Superintendent Thomas indicated, a 4-lane track with the straightaway, 100-meter straightaway. There is a full-size regulation soccer field, and there's even a high jump area. And that's actually all, if you refer to page, I believe it's page 58 of the agenda. I think it was page 58. It does have the latest and greatest plan. Now, that has not gone out to the community as of yet, because I think the concern is they want to ensure that there's funding available from both parties before they start down the process, before they start down the road of going out to the community to share this plan. But this was the plan that you see in the report, in the agenda. That was kind of the best case scenario that they could get. So they are getting a track, which originally we didn't think would fit. Albeit a little bit smaller. They are getting a full-size turf field. They are getting lighting. That was another consideration, because they would have to go through the site plan process. There was an opportunity for residents that back onto the school and to the park to object to this. So they were trying to mitigate all of these things when they came up with this design. So it hasn't gone out to the full community. They have indicated that a full-size track and field are just not going to fit onto the site. And this was the best compromise, best solution, which has everything that they're looking for. It just probably not to the grand scale that they were looking at it. But once again, it's the constraints of the site.
So, Mr. Chairman, just one more question, I guess. So when they take this to the community, and I anticipate it not being well received, only from historical, just from what we've heard in our other meetings. I mean, I think it's come a million miles from where we were before. but who will take, I can put this, who will take the hit for how this is presented in terms of this is a combined, I guess, funded Duff repeal. I mean, if it ever gets approved, or if we ever get the funding approved, city from a funding perspective, but really the design has really been on the laps of the city. Am I correct?
Through the chair, notwithstanding the funding piece, if we just put the funding piece aside, if we were going to go out to a community meeting, it would be a joint meeting. It would be a meeting of Duff repeal, and we would have to go in as a united front on this.
All right. Well,
but notwithstanding the funding.
Yeah, notwithstanding funding. So, Trustee Thomas, away you go.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
If you have a joint force with the city and Duff repeal staff and the trustees, that's the only way you can go to in front of them anymore. They are very, very much frustrated. That's one of so many years I was the trustee there. That's one of the best parent council right in last 2 years there. Very hardworking parent council.
Thank you, Trustee Thomas. Is there anybody else who'd like to make a comment or have any questions for the reports? Okay, so seeing none, we will continue on. To G4, Treasury Report.
And through the chair, we require receipt prior to inviting Executive Superintendent Chair Paca and Superintendent Hester to present the report.
Thank you. Can I have somebody move receipt, please? Trustee Xavier, thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none, please go ahead.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. This Treasury Report this evening is presented in order to bring information forward to the trustees regarding cash management, investments, and long-term debt of the school board. You may recall earlier this year, we brought forward a temporary borrowing bylaw for capital purposes. And at that time, we did indicate that bringing forward a Treasury Report would become a regular routine in this regard, just to make sure everybody is up to date on where the board stands when it comes to our cash management needs and where we are with debt levels. So our intent is to make this a regular report coming forward. As this is the first iteration of the report, it kind of will provide a baseline information for the Board of Trustees to know where things are right now. And then the information that comes forward in future reports will be based on knowing where we were now and how things have changed along the way. With regards to borrowing for Duff repeal, there are 2 temporary borrowing resolutions in place, both approved by the Board of Trustees, however, at different times. The operating borrowing resolution has been in place for a significant number of years, and the borrowing resolution for capital was approved just earlier in 2022. Those resolutions are listed at 150 million for operating and 65 million for capital. We do not borrow to those approved limits. In fact, we try to keep borrowing to a limited amount where possible. Right now, the current line of credit for operating stands at 60 million. However, there has been 2 instances prior to this report where we have had to increase that borrowing amount temporarily to meet some of our cash flow needs. There was a temporary increase to 70 million back in the spring, and then a recent increase to 80 million. And then after that temporary time frame, which is usually 1 month, it reverts back to the $60 million limit. The reason we have that in place is to ensure we can meet our payment needs, whether it be payroll, vendor payments, accounts payable. And the reason that happens is because we go through different peaks and valleys when it comes to our revenue receipts from the ministry and from municipalities. From the ministry, we receive grants for student needs transfer payments on a monthly basis. When it comes to our tax installments, we receive them regular every 3 months from municipalities. So there will be times when our cash flow, our cash levels are at a position where we need to borrow not as much, or maybe not borrow at all. But then as time passes, we reach those valleys where we really do need to use our line of credit we have in place with our financial institution. So as we've just finished the fiscal year 2021-2022, we can report to trustees, although it's not finalized or in financial statements at this time, but the board has incurred interest expense of approximately $320,000 with regards to operating borrowing during the 21-22 year. We now have borrowing in place for capital needs, and the difference with capital is that we borrow based on supported capital projects from the ministry. So we know the ministry will fund us for school renewal, school conditions improvement, and capital projects. However, we don't receive those funds until after we've incurred the costs and then report to the ministry twice a year. So we're able to now tap into this capital borrowing to fund those projects that we know we'll receive the funding for twice a year to pay down that debt once we receive it from the ministry. Interest costs with regards to short-term borrowing for capital are covered by grants. So that was one of the reasons we separated the two types of borrowing so that we could keep track of that interest and receive reimbursement for that interest cost. The other type of debt that the school board has at this time would be with regards to our long-term debt, which really is in the form of debentures. Now, debentures are really a historical way of funding capital projects. Back when we were under a New People Place model of funding, school boards would band together to put debentures, get them approved and put in place. That would have been through the Ontario School Board Financing Corporation. And then we transitioned to where the ministry put in place the debentures for the capital needs of school boards, building, major capital projects like schools. And those were financed through the Ontario Financing Authority. We no longer are in that environment where we're issuing debentures. So these are historical debentures that are in place. They're always reported in the financial statements for the school board. And the most recent information, although it's for the year end, August 31st, 2021, we have included the information on debentures in this report for you. This will be updated for our financial statements for August 31st, 2022. But really, we'll just age it for another year and what has come off as debentures and what is still outstanding as the debenture payment. So again, this report is to provide that information to you. And again, it will become a regular report coming forward to the Administration and Finance Committee. And on that, Superintendent Hester and I are prepared to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the reports. Onward, G5, trustee election updates. Associate Director.
Thank you, and through the chair, this was a report that was distributed as part of the taupe sheet that was sent out earlier this evening from Cindy. And prior to inviting Councillor Margaret Beck to present the report, I asked for receipt.
Thank you. Can I have Trustee Anika, thank you for moving receipt. Any opposed? Seeing none. Council Beck.
Good evening, and through the chair, this report before trustees this evening outlined some key information for trustee candidates and the public generally. Up until the swearing in of the incoming Board of Trustees at the inaugural meeting, trustees know that the current Board of Trustees continue to exercise its duties. If, however, the restricted decision-making period commences, then there are exceptions to this. That means that if on October 24th, less than 9 of the current trustees return, a restricted decision-making period will commence. So that means that they are restricted from appointing or removing an officer, hiring or firing an employee, disposing of real property exceeding $50,000, and making any expenditure in excess of $50,000 unless all of this was approved prior to nomination day. The rest of the report before you this evening is a consolidation of materials that were already communicated and made available to trustees as provided by General Manager Campbell's office. So that's just a summary of what the report contains, and at this point, we'd be happy to receive any comments or questions.
Thank you, Council Beck. I see Trustee Hoban has her hand up. Anybody else? Trustee Hoban, please proceed. And if anybody else has any questions, please just post it in the chat or you'll be able to text me. Thank you.
I really want to thank you for the report, Margaret, and through the chair, because it was becoming very confusing with all the different dates as to when exactly trustee who is not returning would still be in office. You know, the end date, I guess, retirement date. And so now we know it's November 21st, just before the swearing in of the new board. So because that's important for parents to know who to call. And it's also important for the person to know if, you know, their responsibilities, because even though we may not be returning, we would want to carry out our duties. So I really appreciate the clarification on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Hoban. Are there any other questions? Trustee DeCosta, go ahead, please.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just I missed the date. So trustees' last day of that they have authority is what? Well, not authority, but that there will be a trustee of Dufferin Peel would be what date?
So through the chair, that would be at the inaugural meeting. So it's November 22nd. That's when this up until the swearing in of the incoming Board of Trustees. And so that inaugural meeting is the evening of November 22nd.
So does that mean that also all other municipalities would be all on the same day? Because what happens if a trustee is elected to a municipal position and their inaugural is on November the 15th? Well, what happens then? And then you don't have anybody technically legally signed in an inaugural until November the 22nd.
Well, that's a very good question. I'm going to need to look into that.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The chair, if I can take that away, and if,
Yeah.
of course, if there are any questions tonight that we don't have the answer to, we can take them away, research them, and get back to trustees.
Just God forbid we would not want to do two positions of trustee and counselor at the same time. That would be a huge undertaking. But anyway, that's a curious question I have. Thank
Through the chair, I'd be happy to get back to you on that, and to all trustees.
Thank you, Trustee DeCosta, for the question. Are there any other questions?
I do have a question, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Trustee De Rosario, go ahead, please.
To the chair, to Margaret, in the list of trustee term, the key dates, you have November 15, 2022, School Board of Trustees term of office begins. Then you have at the very end, November 14, 20, so that's the ending. But then if you will have November 15, 2022 as the School Board of Trustees term of office begins, why would it end on November 21st? Isn't that a little bit confusing?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? So I just want to make sure I got your question right.
I was confused with the dates. So on one bullet, you said November 15, 2022, the School Board of Trustees term of office begins.
Right.
So if it's beginning of the term, in this third bullet, it's saying November 22, 2022, inaugural board meeting. That's when supposed to be, it ends November 21 for the current trustees and for the ones who are not returning.
Right.
So why would it be, the beginning is the 15th, and why would it end for the not returning trustees November 21st? So it's a little bit, you're beginning the term on the 15th, and yet they're still continue
Right.
with the maybe the new trustees coming in already on the 15th, and then you still have the old trustees having their responsibility until the 21st.
Okay. Thank you very much for the clarification. I understand your question now, I think. So through the chair, the incoming trustees, the incoming board of trustees the outgoing board of trustees, I'm losing my train of thought here. Excuse me for a second. Sorry, the incoming trustees, board of trustees, pardon me, they have to be sworn in order to start exercising their duties. And so we have a time period in between when the term starts and when the swearing in happens. Some municipalities and or school boards may have the inaugural meeting the day after. But it's because we have that pause.
Yeah, so through the chair, if I could just provide a bit of clarification, our procedural bylaw allows inaugural board to happen up to 7 days, right? So it just happens to be the timing of when the election happens, the timing of when the trustee term begins on the 15th, and 7 days later happens to be the following Tuesday. So, I mean, it could technically happen the day after, but we're allowed to have that in term. And I think the third point that Margaret included in her report captures it, that from the 15th to the actual swearing in or the inaugural board, members of the current board of trustees continue in their decision-making roles.
Okay, all right. So I get that. And I would assume that would be explained to the incoming trustees.
Through the chair, yes. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I guess we will muddle through it as we go along. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Rosario. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Councilor Beck, for the report. We move on to there are nothing in H, no notices of motion, no additional business. On to section K, questions asked of and by board trustees.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, when you recognize me.
I'll start a list. Yep. So Trustee Mario Pascucci, Trustee Hoban, Trustee Ionica. Is there anybody else? Trustee Corbett, thank you. Yep. Sorry, it's just where you are on my screen here. Looking from top to bottom here, Del Rosario. Trustee Leroy, okay. And then Trustee Xavier. All right, so I have a list here of Trustee Mario Pascucci, Trustee Sharon Hoban, Trustee Bruno Nica, Trustee Bria Corbett, Trustee Luz Del Rosario, Trustee Leroy Onua, and Trustee Sean Xavier. Is there anybody else? All right, Trustee Mario Pascucci, continue, please.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Thomas, if you don't mind, Superintendent, how are you doing? I need your help on something if you don't mind. What I'm looking at is St. Dominic's right now. St. Dominic's apparently has a very difficult traffic pattern in the morning because there's two schools there, St. Dominic's, and then there's the public school in that system, and there's just one feeder road going in there. And there have been a lot of concerns regarding traffic flow. Matthew, do you have a chance to get over there and take a look at it with your staff, or designate staff to go in the morning and when the day ends to take a look at the pattern, because it may be something we have to look at traffic safety. I suggest we could. How would you think would be the best way of addressing this? This is my thinking. What's your thinking on that?
So through the chair, thank you for the question, Trustee Piscucci. I would have to also, I think, consult with our coterminous board, because as you've indicated, there is the Peel District School Board school that is adjacent to St. Dominic. And so I think there is an issue with respect to the traffic flow because of the fact that we do have the two schools side by side. What we normally do, or what we do in most instances when there are concerns that are brought up about traffic flow at a particular school, is that we can engage with Mississauga Traffic Safety Council as well to assess whether there might be the opportunity for a site inspection to occur to assess traffic flow and look at potential mitigating options that we might be able to pursue. So I can certainly take that back and see if what we can do to follow up on that.
I'd like to get an idea from you or staff, like how many buses we have that are ours, and then maybe have a full assessment of what's theirs. The last thing we want to do is step on their toes, there meaning Peel Board, but the
Right.
travel flow issue is a concern. Also, the idea of, can we bring the buses in through another route? Is there an opportunity to do that as opposed to the main feeder road? The schools have worked very closely together, and there's a good working relationship with staff on both sides.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure no one gets hurt in the interim.
So through the chair, if I may, I just would add that General Manager Dobson and her team at StopR would also, they also have a traffic safety officer who can review
Excellent.
The issue with the school buses to sort of assess whether there may be opportunities for looking at a different area for drop off, for pickup, and also the timing, because that's something that they do quite regularly throughout our district.
Everybody's doing the best they can under the circumstances. It's not pointing a finger to anybody that's negative. Just let's see if we can make it better so no one gets hurt, God forbid. Okay, Mr. Chairman, and I also talked about the in and out there. Mr. Chairman, and to Matthew again, I apologize for this, Matthew. I was speaking to a parent the other night, and there are signs that go on and off. Can you take a look at the one in St. Dominic's? Because at night, person's they say they have beaming of light coming into the rooms. Does the fixture be required to be on in the evening after 11 o'clock or something like this? Can you have somebody take a look at that and see how bright it is in the evening when this light comes from one of the signs that we own?
Absolutely. Through the chair, just to clarify, you're referring to the exterior boulevard sign?
Correct. The one that says St. Dominic's or whatever the school is.
Okay.
Okay, please, if you don't mind. One more, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay. Regarding these exterior signs, the concern I have is that, I understand we're no longer putting trustees' names on there, but we are still trustees and representative of the people until the date is determined. And we have in the past put our names there during the summer, so they know who to get in contact with, and that's great. And yeah, I got one or two calls, and it's not a lot of them, but I'm sure a number of people did get calls, some more than the other. The question I have to ask is that right now, I understand that you're looking at it, and through you to the associate director. And I don't think you're looking at it and seeing if the trustee's name could be up there during this period of time. Daniel, do you have any information that you can share with us now? And if not, can you get some information back to us about having the names? About the names on the list, if you don't mind.
Sure. Through the chair, what I can share with trustees now is that having your name on the boulevard sign and your contact information is no different than having your name or contact information in a book or communication already existing at the board. So it's not as if the boulevard sign is scrolling re-elect trustee whomever.
Right.
It's just stating the facts that you are the sitting trustee, and if anybody wants to contact you, here's the contact information.
Excellent. That's all I'm asking for, to make sure that happens. I know there's something went out, but I want to make sure it's understood that we looked at it and critically assess it, et cetera. So essentially, it just says the sitting trustee is ABC. Whatever.
Correct. No different than it would be displayed on the board website.
Right.
No different than it would be displayed in a newsletter. Right.
Excellent.
So it all follows the same.
Thank you very much for doing this, everybody. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon, I guess. If I have any more questions, Mr. Chairman, I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Trustee Mario Pascucci. Trustee Sharon Hoban, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is to staff around the safety at our schools in terms, I know that we have some new administrators and maybe even some new admin assistants. And I'd like to know if we will be addressing and reiterating the locking of the doors and doors not being propped open and swipe cards being up to date, et cetera, with all of our schools, given the nature of some of the things that have happened the last couple of days in my particular city. It really brought to mind the safety in our schools. Also, the reviewing of the procedure of our lockdowns and procedures. When will all that happen with our schools?
So through the chair, I can start. We can work with corporate communications to make sure we send out a general email reminder with regards to, the standard practice of locking doors, locking the front door, swipe cards, what to do if, swipe card reader doesn't work or whatever the case may be. I believe there are specific times throughout the year and so many of the lockdown and fire drill procedures that need to take place, and they're pre-planned throughout the school year. I believe one has to, and Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong, I think one has to be undertaken in the fall. And there's a few throughout the year, but what I can do if it helps, we can define that in issues and events for trustees. So you have an idea as to how many of each procedures take place throughout the school year and roughly what time of year that those procedures take place. But it's a requirement for all schools.
And so in terms of when is that discussed with our administrators though? Like I'm specifically thinking about our new administrators that have so much on their plate right now. Well, everyone has a lot on their plate, but our new administrators have so many, things to think about. I'm just wondering when that is addressed with them.
So through the chair, prior to the start of the school year, there's a number, a checklist and a number of policies that are reviewed with everybody, whether it's lockdown, safe schools, school year calendar, a number of them. So it's all part of that. And we can definitely make sure that we connect with through Associate Director Amel's office. We can make sure that all of the family schools SOs continue to have that as an agenda item on their monthly meetings, just as a reminder.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Hoban. Next, I have Trustee Ianika, then Trustee Bria Corbett. Go ahead, Trustee Ianika, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all the conversation of funding from the province, I'll ask my regular question of Superintendent Thomas on the porta pack removal at Mary Fix. And do we have a timeline? Do we have approval? Do we have a timeline? And what are the next steps? If you could, please.
So through the chair, we did receive a response back from the Ministry of Education on our request to use proceeds of disposition, which included money to remediate and demolish several of our porta packs that are in state of disrepair, not being used currently for instructional purposes, etc. And so we have, Mary Fix is one of several that schools where we want to undertake that work. We have to engage in some planning and also to work with the city as well on that. So our goal is to try not to disrupt the school year to the extent possible. I would say at this point, and we haven't finalized any plans, but we are looking at 2023 to actually actively demolish all of the porta packs that we have in our project plan.
Is that January or July 2023?
Well, again, we're through the chair. We're looking to try and, where possible, to minimize disruption to schools. So I think we'd want to work on a case-by-case basis with each school. But I think ideally, much of the work would take place over the summer months when the sites are clear and it's just a lot easier to get in and out.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, with regards to your comment, working with the municipality, I know that in speaking to the local councillor, I had made her aware, and she wouldn't be aware of the fact that we were waiting on the funding. Now she'll be aware that we got the funding because they do have funds allocated to address or look at or refurbishing their part of the land. And I had said to her, I couldn't justify her spending the money, or I don't think, well, let me rephrase that. We couldn't justify the city spending the money and then the board coming in, tearing apart the porta pack, pulling it out and having to redo and respend some funding. So she had agreed for her staff to talk to our staff. So I don't know where that is in the process. I haven't spoken to her as yet. But I'm wondering if it's the same scenario as what we had with regards to the fields, that they've already allocated funds to the budget. And I mean, that's something I can ask her, just politician, and have her staff to give our staff a call so that we're all in the same ballpark and we're all talking out of the same playbook.
Sorry, I was just going to say, through the chair, that would be very helpful, just to be able to coordinate the work as best as possible. So we're certainly willing to work with municipal staff on that in partnership.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my second question, with regards to, well, let me just go back, if I could, on the Mary Fix scenario. Last night, a couple of ratepayers called and had indicated that there were people in cars that had gotten through the city of Mississauga driveway that were on our new parking lot doing donuts and on the new grass doing donuts. And that's a little bit of concern for me as well, not only for the school and what we just did there, but also for the community because they live there. And Manaz was phenomenal. You know, the Kathy, the principal, talked to Manaz and the superintendent, Goss. Manaz instructed him or her on what to do. He was also in contact with our security folks. But these are the type of things now that are starting to open up and starting to be a bit of an issue now that people have access to a raceway for all intents and purposes in that back corner. And Matthew, you may recall, on the other side of the porta pack, there's that great big piece of asphalt that you could run and do donuts all night if you really wanted. And so I'm a little bit concerned about that as well. The city not, and again, that's something I'll talk to Deepika about closing that up at the end of the night. And we, Dufferin Peel, have put an extra padlock, but the issue is not on our side. The issue is on the city side. And I know that we don't have control over that, but I will. These are the type of things now that are starting to creep up because of the additions or the upgrades that we've done and have given that community some people in that community access to where they really shouldn't have access. So I'll talk to her about that as well and have her staff go back to our staff. My second question, if I could, the removal of portables in some of our schools, St. Timothy's specifically, they did some work and thank you to staff for the work that was done there. Positive comments from the community, from just the neighbors. But the question is, with the amount of kids at St. Timothy's and the number of portables that are there and a couple which are not being used, does staff have a time frame approximately of when? And if staff doesn't, that's fine. An email would be more than suffice, because this Mary Fix brought on this question. So I'll apologize for the untelegraphed question. But if staff could send me an email on approximately when the portables will be removed, that would be most appreciated.
Through the chair, would be happy to do so.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Ainika. I have Trustee Corbett. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just before my two questions, if I may comment on just Trustee Holben's mention about the safety in our schools and the lockdown and the hold and secure procedures. So as a result of the very recent events in Mississauga North just yesterday, and we had an armed shooter and a subsequent tragic event that occurred. We had a death of a police officer and injured residents. I've heard from parents in my areas. They were very surprised. They were very concerned that our schools, none of our schools actually, went into hold and secure at that time. And my understanding is the schools, well, first, the schools weren't aware. The schools weren't even aware that there was a serious situation happening in our community. The other part of it is Peel Regional Police, from my understanding, did not direct any of our schools to go into hold and secure. So there's that. But I did have one school community. It was like the perfect storm. When all of this was happening, and I'm not sure of the sequence of events or the timing, but one of my schools did have a fire alarm, not a fire drill. It was a fire alarm. At that time, around that time, of course, that needed to be investigated. Fire was on scene. And so it did raise the question that in the event that we have a school that needs to go into hold and secure, and obviously you can't plan a good time for a fire or another event happening at a school, we really need to ensure that there is a plan in place for our schools for them to be able to go to an alternate safe place offsite if it's required. Thankfully, everybody was okay. Everybody was safe in this case. But whether that's a neighboring school, maybe a Peel school if we need, our community center, a mall, someplace, whatever is close. But my first concern is we need to ensure first that there's a policy in place. So not just an emergency plan, but an evacuation plan to an alternate safe location. And that plan is designated, and there is that location that's been identified for every school, so that there's a safe way and an organized way to be able to get all of our students and staff to a safe location should re-entering their school not be an option. Through the chair.
So through the chair, I can confirm that there is a plan in place for every school with regards to what the next either closest school, public, Catholic, community center, and it's not even in the event of a fire drill, but if there's anything that happens at the school that closes the school for any prolonged period of time, depending on the type of time of year, time of day, that's always an option for us to move them. We always have, it may not be the most comfortable space, it might be the gymnasium, but every school has a designated kind of a secondary safety school site. So that plan is already in place.
Okay, thank you, and through the chair. So that's great. We've got a plan. Can we also ensure that the schools are aware of that plan? And perhaps while we're doing we do a lot of drills. We do fire drills. We do lockdown drills. perhaps we need to also coordinate what that drill would look like if they need to leave the school area and go to that alternate location, just so that everybody's safe, everybody's secure. And because it's great to have it in paper in a binder, but if we haven't practiced it, and it would be out of the norm, so we obviously don't do this on a regular basis, we just want to make sure that safety precautions are in place.
So through the chair, absolutely. Let me take that one away, and we can see what we can do about that one.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, can I ask my other questions that
Actually,
were not related to that?
No, actually, you can, but I'm going to actually pass on to Trustee Hoban for a second. She has questions at this point.
All right.
Sorry, Trustee Corbett, but you just twigged something when I was talking about the previous concern I have around. So, if I could go back to yesterday again, we received the warnings on our phones that there was a shooter in our area. And yet our schools weren't in a hold and secure. And so how do we get I understand the Peel Police were in that particular location were busy, but there must be a process where we have an active shooter in our area. No one knows where he's gone because the alert went out to all of us. And so how do we ensure that we actually get a message to the Peel Police that we really feel our schools should have been in a hold and secure?
So through the chair, I think it's, I think what I would suggest doing, and through our security department and Associate Director Amaral as well, is kind of debrief, because we have a great relationship with the police department, kind of debrief this specific incident, because it was extremely specific.
Yes.
And why things happened the way they happened, and how, if we use this as an example, potentially for God forbid, a similar incident.
Yes.
We can use it to build upon. So I think a debrief would definitely be in order, and then we can share that with trustees.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Trustee Corbett.
Thank you, Trustee Hoban. Trustee Corbett, continue, please. Go ahead.
Oh, and I'm happy to do
sorry,
that. I think...
Trustee Corbett, Trustee D'Souza to this point, or two separate points?
It's to this point, actually.
Okay, go ahead, please. Sorry, Trustee Corbett. Go ahead, Trustee D'Souza.
Thank you. To you, Associate Director, and in reference to what Trustee Corbett said, the situation was wherein we are in a hold and secure status, and the fire alarm goes off in the school, or there is a fire. Hope it doesn't happen, but there's a fire in the school. Now they're supposed to be in the hold and secure status, and there's an active shooter outside, but there's a fire in the school. Now what happens? Are they supposed to go out? Well, go to the secure location, or they're supposed to stay in because it's a hold and secure? I guess that's what Trustee Corbett was mentioning, and that's what happened.
Sure.
Yes.
So through the chair, if there, first of all, we work closely with the police. If there's a full-on fire in the school, we need to evacuate. You need to evacuate the building. There's just, people can't breathe. There's smoke. There's a number of issues that go on. I'd hate to go through kind of all the scenarios in which, if that were to occur in a neighborhood, on a school site, the house next door, I think we take some direction from police, but you need to get the students out of that building. You can't have anybody in a building that's on fire, or there's smoke, or there's because you have no chance in that particular case. So again, it is probably what you described, the worst case scenario ever. But you need to get them out of there if there's a fire. So, but to that point, I mean, what we had is not necessarily the incident occurring on a school site, but from when I read the same emergency broadcast, it was kind of in the region. So I think a debrief absolutely would be in order, because I'm not sure whether this type of scenario has played itself out to this extent. Not that I've ever seen an emergency broadcast on it, for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Trustee D'Souza. Go ahead, Trustee Corbett.
Okay.
Now answer your question.
Okay, so through you. So my first question is just in regards to the direction of school support. So we've sent out communications to our parents, our families, our constituents about the importance of making sure they are registered as Catholic school supporters, separate school supporters. It's all great. But my question is, does a person's Catholic school support default to the public when those students, the children they have, graduate from our system and they go on to post-secondary education, whether it's college, university, trade schools? And the reason I ask is because I spoke with a resident who mentioned they did not move. So this isn't a case of where they were Catholic school supporters and moved and then it defaulted to public. They were confirmed separate school supporters, and they had not moved, but then they noticed that after their children had left Upper Peel, graduated from secondary school, went on to post-secondary, their tax designation changed to public. Now they were aware of it and they've got it corrected, but the question was raised, is that the norm? Is that what's happening? And if so, how many people are not aware? And ultimately that affects an even bigger portion of people that, I mean, we always knew, and we've been fighting with the issue of having it default to public when you move houses, ownership changes. But in this case, I'm just curious, is this a fluke? Is this a one-off, or is this actually happening and we're not aware of it?
So through the chair, I can start. In my experience, I've never heard of that before. Once you've, as long as you're at the same house, the same time, and you identify your school support, it remains that way until, as you mentioned, such time as you move, and then it defaults. If you're a Catholic supporter, it goes back to, or separate school supporter, it goes back to public school supporter. So it's something I'm not aware of it. I'm not sure whether General Manager Campbell or Superintendent Thomas have heard otherwise, because that changes the whole Get Tick program then for sure. But it's something we can definitely follow up, unless General Manager Campbell has suggests otherwise. Something we can just, a question we can ask MPAC to find out if their processes have changed. General Manager?
Yeah, through the chair, I agree with you. And it sounds like an anomaly, but we certainly, if we had the information on who and what and where, we could check it out with MPAC.
So through the chair, so you want me to send you the individual's information then? And
no, through the chair, I think the larger question is, has there been a change of practice when someone leaves post-secondary Catholic education? Does it default? Is there any change of practice at MPAC that would suggest that it defaults back to public school supporter at any time aside from when you leave? So we'll just get clarification on that. Perfect. There's always opportunity that something may mess up in the system and the software that's done it, and which is why, in large part, when it comes to election time, there's a reminder that goes out to everybody to say, hey, just as you're registering to vote, check your school support as well, and if it's wrong, address it with MPAC. So I'm assuming they say that because there may be glitches in the system here and there, but we'll just reach out to MPAC to ensure that there's no kind of system level new policy in place, which defaults you at any time aside from when you leave.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, my last question, if I may. I'm going to take that as a yes because I don't hear Mr.
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Yes, go ahead.
That's
please.
okay. So regarding Free the Flow initiative, I know this was brought up at our last ANF in June so that our schools would be ready in September. But I'm just wondering, is there, through the chair, if there's an update on this initiative in our secondary schools to have free menstrual products available in all of our secondary school washrooms, and when all of our secondary schools will have this, because it's not in all of our secondary schools, and what the plan for rollout is for our elementary schools as well.
So through the chair, I can begin, and General Manager Richard Mariah might be able to also contribute to the answer. But what I can say is that facility staff have been working to install dispensers and menstrual products across not just all of our secondary schools, but we're also going to be undertaking a campaign to also do that in our elementary schools. So what we have done is basically piggybacked onto the Free the Flow campaign through the Ministry of Education's Menstrual Equity Initiative that was announced last year. The ministry has actually provided a nominal allocation of product dispensers to our school board and all school boards in the province. And what we've done is made the decision that we would top that amount up to ensure that we do have a dispenser or two, depending on the size of the school, in every school across the board. We are focusing, obviously, with priority on our secondary schools. Our hope is to have all of our secondary schools covered within the next month or so. And then it's just dependent on the timing of receipt of dispenser shipments that we've procured. We do have menstrual products that we've received from the Ministry of Education on hand. So we do have that ready to go as well. So it just depends on the timing of when shipments will arrive. And once we complete that, we will then start to move in a more concerted fashion to cover our elementary schools.
So thank you. Through the chair, I guess my question is, when we did the pilot for the Free the Flow, were dispensers used?
Through the chair, I'm going to defer this one to General Manager Mariah, but I believe that we did have some older dispensers on hand from before, but I'll ask General Manager Mariah to respond.
Thank you, Superintendent Thomas. Through the chair, yes, there were some existing dispensers that we had in our schools that were used, but the new products that we've received from the ministry come with, they don't fit the old dispensers. And so we had to get the dispensers that the ministry was providing. And that's where it's at this point in time. But we continue to change them over. As soon as we get our shipments in, we continue to change them over. And we expect, as Superintendent Thomas said, to have all the secondary schools done by within the next month, and continuing on with the elementary schools as well.
So through the chair, that now explains the delay, because we're waiting on dispensers, and the dispensers and the product need to match. So in the event that, because many of these young women cannot wait, we need a plan in place in all of our schools where they may not have the dispensers yet, but they at least have access, whether it is, I mean, nobody likes to go to, the school office or their teacher and ask, but maybe the health room or the health teacher, or there needs to be something right now in their interim, because, and to be fair, when I raised this in June, it was with the understanding that our schools would be ready with product in September. And it's another month, which I'm glad we're making progress in terms of getting them into our secondary schools as well as our elementary schools. But this can't wait, unfortunately. So we need product available, whether we have the dispensers or not, at least in every school, so that these young women have access to it, because we can't have them missing more school. We can't have them leaving school because of this. And it's a huge barrier. It's a huge equity barrier, actually. And given all of the concerns with the pandemic and the learning loss and whatnot, every day matters. So I would like to make sure that at least from that perspective, the product is there in some capacity, some way, shape, or form, and that it's communicated to the schools, and then the schools communicate it to the families so that everybody knows how to access this, because the school administrators are not aware of what is happening. It's this whole initiative has been up in the air for such a long time. And when I continue to ask about it, because it's important, nobody has answers. So it's the students themselves that are raising this issue to me. So I would like to continue to push for this, because it has to happen, whether we have dispensers or not. And that's great when we get them, but we need this now.
So through the chair, and I appreciate the comment, Trustee Corbett, and certainly we also want to try and ensure that we prioritize this and with as far as the installation and the availability of product. I will say that my colleague, Superintendent Martine Lewis, is also overseeing the general initiative in terms of communication with administrators, in terms of ensuring that product can be made available in the meantime. So I will definitely take that back and discuss that further with her.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Corbett. Trustee Luz del Rosario, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to Superintendent Thomas. Through the chair, would you kindly give us an update on how the roofing at St. Gerard is coming along, and how is the safety of our kids protected as well while this construction is going on? And the second part of that question is, I believe there was an issue on air conditioning as well at one point in time. Could you please give us an update? Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Del Rosario. Through the chair, I can respond to the roofing question from the latest information that I've received. A substantial portion of the roofing work was completed actually just before the start of school last week. However, there is going to be some remaining roofing work that will be conducted over weekends until the end of September. And I'm looking to General Manager Mariah if he has any further update on that.
Thank you, Superintendent Thomas. Through the chair, that update is where we are right now when it comes to the roofing. Most of the, a substantial amount of the roofing work was completed, and there's some final touch-ups that we have to do to get the final section completed, and we expect to get that done in due course. Now, the second part of the question about air conditioning, there was one of the units had to be turned off so that the roofing work could get done around it. But as far as I'm aware, as of today, there haven't been any, it's been returned to normal operations, and there haven't been any concerns from the school that as of today, but I will have that checked out if there is.
Yes, could you please have that checked out? I will really appreciate it. So just to clarify then, the workers that does the roofing are no longer in the school during the week, but they're working during the weekends?
That's correct.
Okay, and we expect to get them all done by the end of September?
That I believe has been the schedule. I'm gonna do that. So yes. Yes.
So I'll make sure I've heard that, and I'll be happy to hear that actually. So just wanting to confirm that. And in your understanding, we don't have any health issues again that happened earlier on when we were putting the roofing? You have not heard anything again?
Through the chair, no, there's been none. There were some off-gassing in the very beginning when the first parts of the roof was being done, but that was addressed promptly, and there's none of that.
Wonderful. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, General Manager Mariah and Superintendent Thomas. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Student trustee Anua, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have two quick questions. And first question, I think, is in regard to cafeteria prices across the board. I think this probably applies to all schools across the board, that there's been a 10% increase in prices for all products that cafeterias sell. And I think many of the conversations that I've had with students, they've asked for an explanation for why there has been this 10% increase. And I didn't want to give the vague explanation of there's inflation is really high. I do think that they deserve at least a written explanation of why these prices are increasing. One, because school cafeteria food is one of the only respites parents have from the increase in costs for pretty much everything. High school students mainly buy their own food, or most high school students I know buy their own food. And that means that relieves some of the financial burdens that parents have. But now with this 10% increase in prices, it's very hard on students, putting more pressure on students to even, I guess, get lunch. Do I pick to get lunch, or do I choose to do something else with my money? And I don't think that's something or a decision that students should be having to make during the school day. So can we talk to our vendors and ask them for why there's been an increase in prices? And maybe it is inflation, but there could be another reason that I could give to these students instead of just saying that inflation is high, therefore food costs are high as well.
So thank you. And through the chair, absolutely, student trustee Leroy, we do have to acknowledge that inflationary pressure is big, though, and it's been massively impacted the food services industry. Our supply chain department and finance have had multitude of discussions with our food provider, Aramark. In this area is one area. We had actually been able to limit their increases to 10%. So that was, although it doesn't appear to be good news, it was kind of a good news item at the time. But there has been some information shared as to why some of this has happened. We have to remember that, our cafeteria services have been closed for a significant number of months in the school. In some schools, it's been over 2 years. We've held the provider to their costs, food costs that were first initiated back in the first year of their contract. However, that is now 3 to 4 years worth of holding their prices stable with no increases, even though there have been other cost increases throughout those years to this provider, even during the years that they weren't operating in our schools. So what I can do is gather some of the information and backup and shared reasonings behind all of that, and make sure you receive that information to share with your fellow students across the system. We have put out some information, I know, to our trustees. I will double check to make sure student trustees were copied on that information. If not, I will definitely forward it to you. Again, acknowledging it has been pretty tough for the food service industry as well. And they were well aware to try to hold price increases as low as possible, and even try not to impact the most popular food items, trying to acknowledge that we know our students need to access these food items. So through final conversations, there was an agreement to allow an increase to the prices, but again, holding them to at least a 10%. So happy to get you some more information and send that out to you and all trustees if we haven't sent it to everyone already.
So quick follow question to that. So our vendors, they've been held to a price cap for the last few years based on our requests?
Yes, so through the chair, we have asked our food service provider when they were open prior to COVID to try to, they initiated a couple of increases, I think, into the second year, but then we asked them to reduce prices on some items and to hold them steady with no increases. Even when they opened last year in some of our schools, they were not, we did not allow them to increase any of the prices last year in the schools they were opening. But this year, through another discussion and understanding the experiences in the food service industry and the inflationary pressures they've experienced on their cost of goods sold, there was an agreement for a price increase this year.
All right, that sounds way more understandable now. And I think that if students can get the full picture, then there isn't going to be as many, I guess, tough conversations that I have to have with them. And Mr. Chair, can I ask my second question?
Sorry, I was muting myself. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. And then my second question is in concerning admissions. I think over the last, I think starting when school started, I've been getting a few calls from parents regarding their registration to our schools. I think some of them are newcomers, but I think probably most of them are newcomers to the country. And I think there's a significant backlog in our admissions department. And even now, I think some of those students are still not in any school. They're just sitting at home. And what Trustee Corbett mentioned about there's been a significant loss in instructional time during the last few years. I think it's imperative that students are in schools. I don't know what that looks like. But that's another thing that I think that needs to be discussed, giving parents the full picture of how long it's going to take for their kids to be in school. And I think it especially concerns us considering that we've had a loss of enrollment. Right? We're doing ourselves a disservice by not making the process as seamless as possible for parents when they want to enter our schools. So is there an update or is there a plan for us to get rid of this admissions backlog and get students in school as soon as possible?
Yeah, so through the chair, I mean, I think it's a pretty seamless process. What I'd like, or what I'd ask for is, are there any specific examples or schools? And you don't have to share them now, but if you want to email them to me, we can look into those specific schools to identify exactly what, if anything, is happening there. Because I don't want to deal kind of in generalities, but if you have any specific schools, I'd suggest that you forward them to me, and then we'll follow up with those administrators to find out what exactly is happening. Is there a backlog? And how do we move it along if that's the case?
And I do acknowledge that staff is doing an incredible job considering it is the beginning of the school year. And I don't want to seem like I'm, I guess, being ungrateful. Let's say that. I'm not being ungrateful towards staff, but there are kids out there that aren't in school because they haven't been registered yet. And I will forward you all the names that I have.
Sure. I just need the names of the schools. I don't need the names of the actual students, but I mean, you're absolutely right. And I think we all, and Trustee Hoban acknowledged it right off the get-go, everybody at every level of the organization is doing their part to make sure that the start of the school year is as seamless as possible. So The message that was sent out to all administrators was kind of to admit at all costs, like get them in, to your point, get them in chairs. We can deal with the processing of the information later. So if that isn't happening at some schools for whatever the reason, again, I don't think it's an indictment against the specific school. It may be a day or maybe an afternoon. Who knows what the scenario is, but please share the school information with us and we'll follow up with those specific schools to find out if there's any other supports that we can help or what the particular situation may have been.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Trustee Xavier, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question actually, it goes back to when we were speaking about the proposed secondary school fields. It's actually towards Superintendent Matthew Thomas. When we hold a school site, for example, the Mount Pleasant site, how, just like the Mount Pleasant site, the school sites that we currently own, could you let us know what's the time frame that we own these school sites, and do we sometimes buy these sites and hold on to them?
So through the chair, when a new residential subdivision is being planned, the municipality usually sets aside or reserves certain sites as potential locations for future schools. At that time, developers will come in, start planning out the development of housing, and during that period of time, school boards will get options that they can choose to pursue to reserve certain sites in that neighborhood that's being developed. Generally speaking, the sites are these options on purchasing sites are available for a fixed period of time. In many cases, there's also an option to renew those beyond the time limits that are in the specific option to purchase. The decision about whether to exercise the option is contingent on enrollment projections and enrollment yields in that specific neighborhood. As trustees would be aware, our planning department usually puts out projections, calculating yields based on number of households, historical patterns, and potential future development sort of yields in that area. So to answer your question, Trustee Xavier, once, if we feel that there's an opportunity to pursue building a school on a site that we've reserved, we will put together a business case to submit to the Ministry of Education for capital funding. And then, if the Ministry of Education approves our request for capital funding, then we would be in a position to decide to exercise the option. Generally, we kind of plan that out in a 10-year or so time frame, so that we can sort of see how that development takes hold and line up our capital funding as to the ministry in that intervening time. So if, on the other hand, the student yields, the Catholic student yields just aren't there in that subdivision, and that student population from that area can be accommodated at a neighboring Catholic school, we might decide at that point to decline the option, at which case we would just let it, we would release it. We would not exercise that option.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Matthew Thomas. So through you, Mr. Chairman, is it possible in issues of events, we don't need it tonight itself, but later on in the future, if you can send us a list of which properties we currently own, and if there's an expiry to these properties, or if we own these properties, I guess expiry wouldn't be the term we'd use, if it would be a renewal date technically. If you can just kind of send us something in issues of events, just listing the properties we currently have. Is that possible?
And through the chair, are you looking for it board wide, or are you looking for it at specific?
I kind of specific. I just wanted to know my area, but I'm sure other trustees would want to know their area as well. So if you could just put something together, I'm sure everyone would appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Thomas. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Xavier. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I'd like to pass it over to the Vice Chair, please. I have a couple of questions myself.
Okay, thank you very much, Trustee Piscucci. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to I guess Matthew Thomas, because you're the star of the show tonight, answering all the questions. What is the criteria? Has the criteria changed, or I guess what is the criteria now in order for a school to have a crossing guard? Because obviously, during the time when we were receiving notifications from the city that crossing guards were being looked at certain site locations, it was during the pandemic when half the schools weren't in class, or we weren't in class at all, kind of thing. What is the criteria, I guess, and has it changed, do you know, since, I guess, pre-pandemic to now?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. I can respond to the question sort of in the context of what information I've received from the city of Mississauga and the city of Brampton, which is very, very similar. And as trustees would know, the municipal traffic safety councils play a very integral role with respect to having school crossing guards assigned to a particular location. So again, each municipality is responsible for the recruitment of school crossing guards. They would be to assist students from kindergarten to grade 5. Traffic Safety Council recommends the use of adult crossing guards based on relevant criteria for doing so. And generally, these are in response to site inspections requested through the Traffic Safety Council. The members of Traffic Safety Council would generally do a safety audit of the area, review the location of existing guards, and conduct a gap study. And basically, a gap study is conducted in 5-minute increments and takes place from about 30 minutes before the start of the school day to when school starts, and again from bell time, the dismissal time at the end of the day, to about 30 minutes after the bell time at the end of the school day. So in order to assess whether a traffic guard is warranted, or sorry, a school crossing guard rather is warranted, the number of school children and safe gaps in traffic are assessed. There needs to be a minimum requirement of 5 students crossing at that area. And the Traffic Safety Council looks more specifically at how many safe gaps in traffic there would be for students to cross. If there are less than 4 safe gaps available for more than 50% of the time, then a guard would be warranted. So they study, you know, the traffic patterns. They assess whether there's enough of a gap in order for students to be able to safely cross, say at an intersection. Based on their assessment, as noted, if there aren't enough safe gaps in that period of time that they assess, then they would recommend assigning a crossing guard to that location. That's general information that I've received from, again, from our counterparts at the City of Mississauga and City of Brampton. And I can also, if you wish, I can also put some information in issues and events, if that might be helpful.
Yeah, if you can, thank you. I appreciate it. And when you mentioned safe gaps, like, does that mean that somebody doesn't stop at a stop sign? Because oftentimes when you see a crossing guard, it's at a stop sign.
Mm-hmm.
So would a safe gap be where there wouldn't be necessarily a stop sign, maybe a crosswalk?
Through the chair, that's correct. The safe gap would generally apply to areas where there's no restriction on the movement of traffic. So it could be a crosswalk where there's no stop sign, for example.
Okay. Just weird because I very rarely do I see it at crosswalks. I usually see it at stop signs. So I'm trying to figure out where that is. But obviously they would put it at a place where there is, I guess, more of a chance of having a stoppage of traffic rather than just have somebody step in front of us instead of traffic at a crosswalk. So I appreciate it. Yeah, if you can put that information issue in advance, that'd be great. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have another question. I guess through you, Mr. Chairman, to Associate Director or anybody who wants to answer. School permits, what are we doing with those right now? Is it open season for all school permits? Are we rolling it out by, groups first? So charity groups or churches or whatever it is. What's the process? What's happening right now?
So through the chair, I can take that one if
Okay.
Associate Director will let me. He's giving me the green light. Great. So through the chair, yes, we have basically resumed full permitting activities, similar to what we were offering pre-pandemic. We have, again, trustees would be aware that we in the spring had gradually reintroduced issuing permits and focusing exclusively on our youth not-for-profit groups. But as the pandemic has evolved and as public health restrictions have been lifted, we have been monitoring the situation very closely, and we've made the decision to resume full permitting activities.
Thank you. Now, with when you mentioned the nonprofit children's groups, have we seen a lot of them come back, or are they? Because during the pandemic, when our schools were shut down, or when we were told we couldn't have the permits anymore, they obviously found alternate housing, I guess for the programs. Have we seen a lot of them come back?
Through the chair, because it's still very early in the school year, I think we'd want to probably wait a little bit. In terms of the ones that have, through the permits department that I'm aware of, sort of the retention rate, if you will, has generally been pretty solid. But I haven't, to be honest, I haven't been able to follow up on specific activities since, in terms of getting underway in September. Usually there's a bit of a delay before we actually get permit groups into schools. I don't think it happens right away at the beginning of the school year. So I think if you could just bear with me, we can also follow up.
No, and that's fine. No, and that's fine. And the reason why I asked is because I want to make sure that those groups, and even the church groups that were utilizing your schools as well, they know that we're sort of open. We're open for business, and not in the money making sense, but we're open for business again. You can come back to the schools now. We're open. Because the reason for the question is because at CSAC there was a question posed by one of the parents there, one of the members of CSAC, asking what's going on with our permits. So the information is not out there. So I don't know if we can get it out to our old contact list or whatever it is, if you want to use the word Rolodex, to make everybody feel older or younger or whatever you want to call it. But if we can look at ways of getting it out there, saying that, you know what, we are back in play now, so you can come back if you wish. So but thank you very much for the answer. And that is it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Thank you, Superintendent Thomas.
Anybody else on the list? You want to be put on the list? Okay, back to you.
All right then. We are now on to section L, declared interest items. Associate Director.
So thank you, and through the chair, I believe Trustee Luz Dela Rosario will take the chair, as both the chair and vice chair of the committee have declared items, and I will move all four members with declare items into the declared breakout room, and we'll bring you back when we address the item. Just may take a second here.
Glass of wine, some cheese.
Yeah.
Okay, you could have that for us.
No, it's not happening. I can assure you. Thank you.
So trustees will receive, those trustees with declared items will receive a notification that if they accept, we'll move them into the meeting room.
That'd be great.
Now you're still there?
Yeah. So through the chair, we are safe to proceed. All four are in the breakout room.
We're good.
Yes.
Thank you, so Director. Okay, so we have item, declared interest item A6, item L1. Could I have somebody move receipt or approval? I don't see.
Move, Madam Chair.
Okay. Moved by Trustee Thomas. Any opposed? I can see anybody, but no opposed.
No
Carried.
opposed.
Thank you. Thank you. So we can bring them back.
Yes. So let's take a second for them to return.
Okay.
And I believe they're back.
We are okay. On to section M, in camera session. Can I ask somebody please move to move in camera?
Move, Mr. Chairman.
No, once Trustee Bruno Nika, I saw your hand first. Any opposed? Thank you. Associate Director.
So through the chair, what'll happen now for everybody here, we will open up a breakout room in camera. The public, anybody viewing online, will have the broadcast. We'll just display that we're in camera, then we'll reconvene in open session again afterwards. So I will move everybody into the in-camera room. And again, you may receive the accept button. So I'd ask you to accept. And for those that would typically leave us at this time and not come in camera with us, they can leave the meeting directly. So just give me a second. We will move everybody in camera. I would suggest that everybody keep their cameras or mics off until we are in camera. All right, through the chair, we are back in public session.
Okay, Stephen, it's yours.
You do the resident report.
Okay, so we just approved the minutes of the in-camera meeting.
Of June 7th, 2022.
Of June 7th, 2022. Who wants to move that? Frank, it's yours. Is it okay, Frank? Frank, is it okay if you move it? Okay, great. Thank you. You move by Frank. Any opposed? Seeing none. Okay, thank you. Daniel or Stefan, is yours.
All right, thank you. We have our next meeting on October 4th, 2022, and November 8th, 2022. And then that'll bring us to the end of this current calendar year. So can I have somebody move adjournment, please? Trustee Bria Corbett, thank you very much. Any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and we hope you'll have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night,
Bye.
everyone.
Oh, good day for me. Bye.